Welcome to the Truth Over Facts podcast. I'm Dylan, your host, and my co-host Ronnie.
Hey, how's it going?
What's up, big dog?
Well, there is a there is currently a Chinese spy balloon flying over the U.S. right now.
Wait,
Uh,
what? America
yeah,
at Part
there
Two?
is a Chinese there's a Chinese spy balloon that's flying over Montana right now, and I guess nobody's gonna do nothing about it. I guess it's just gonna sit up there. Maybe it's Xi Jinping himself, you know,
How'd you hear
having a
about
night out
this?
of town.
Did you read about this on Newsmax or whatever it's called?
I don't get Newsmax, dog. I don't get that.
Yeah. You got to pay for that? You got to
It's
pay for
it's
propaganda now?
it's trending on Twitter right now, dog. Just
Oh
trending on
yeah.
Twitter. Yeah.
Why do they say it's Chinese and shit? Because it didn't work or what?
Well, I don't know, but it's from the Pentagon saying that it's Chinese. So
No, yeah. World War II, they tried the same shit Japan did by sending over balloon bombs.
yeah.
Yeah. Didn't work out too well. I don't think it even made it halfway.
What was the name of the balloon that they had in World War II that the Germans had? What was the name of that?
The Zeppelin?
Yeah, the
Or the,
Zeppelin.
or the Hindenburg, I thought.
Yeah, those things look pretty cool, dude.
Yeah, Zeppelin. I always remember Indiana Jones bitch ass had to ride one in like the second
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, yeah.
And he'd always be cracking dudes and throwing them out of it.
hmm The sound effects back in the day were so much better.
Oh yeah. That's what America needs right now is another Indiana Jones. Instead we got this guy right here.
And
Yeah.
this guy too.
It's like Charlie Sheen's retarded brother and retarded Indiana Jones, who's a crackhead.
This
He's
guy can,
going everywhere.
this guy right here, he can play the piano with his ding dong.
Yeah,
Give me some more of your money, please. I need
yeah.
more.
Shishini,
I
thank you
need
so much.
I need more of your money so I can continue to grow my wealth and act like I am giving money and food to my people, which I am not. I am
I like
keeping it
when
to
Sean
myself.
Penn, like I'm sorry, but like Sean Penn is starting to piss me off. He's like the Angelina Jolie's of like men, where he's just like, I gotta save everybody and shit. I'm rich, I gotta save
Yeah,
everybody and
didn't he
shit.
go to Ukraine and make a documentary about this guy? Zelensky.
Of course he did. Like Sean Penn makes a documentary about everybody and shit, just like Angelina Jolie. Like they literally try to like go into war zones and shit, and they're like, "Here's a napkin," you know?
It's almost like he probably got like a heads up. Hey, something's about to pop off down here. You might want to get down here and you know,
Save your Golden Globe. Your
writes,
career's been
make
taking a
make
crap
a
lately.
documentary about your boy here that we
Yeah,
put in this position of power so we can continue to launder money in and out of this
right.
godforsaken place.
This laundromat called Ukraine,
Pretty
but that's
much,
just
dog.
it. Like I don't understand how the American populace can continue to believe this bullshit, or it's just like they just keep feeding it down your gullet. It's kind of like a shitty boss, right? They just keep telling you, "Don't worry, it's going to get better," but it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And you're
Yeah.
kind of like, "Where is everybody going? Oh, they're leaving. They're getting better jobs."
I listen to it like every day. Like I don't even listen to music anymore. It's been years since I last listened to music while working all day. I just listen
Oh yeah,
to
that's all I do.
other people talking about like how shitty everything is getting and it's not getting any better.
What do you mean, like a negative feedback loop?
Yeah. And how, you know, the US is in this giant
Fine. What the
we
it's
were learning
Bitcoin.
to write checks, dude. We still had like the spin dial telephones.
Yeah, the hamburger phone or the duck phone.
Yeah.
I still remember the duck phone. But yeah, just the whole entire educational system has just completely changed over, but they've gotten rid of their core values. Trust me, like creativity is the highest form of intelligence. It always has been.
hmm
And arts, music, and stuff like that. That's ultimate higher forms of creativity. But when you get out of the basic principles of education, Like in Japan, I think they spend the first 9 years of a child's life literally teaching the basic principles of life, making your bed, showing up on time, being nice and having etiquette towards your elders, being
Yes.
nice to one another, having good communication skills with one another, other children,
Mm.
and stuff like that. They literally spend the first like 9 years of their life. They don't even get like any homework or anything. Your homework is to be nice to your neighbors, something like that, to go help somebody out. Now in our
Yeah.
educational system, it's like, Mom, what's a penis and what's a vagina? What? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what it
our
is nowadays.
educational system has become more ideological than it has, you know, been more about, teaching the kids the basics and then helping them develop, with what they should learn,
Right.
math, English,
I
writing.
don't personally have children. You do have children. So for me, in my observation, a lot of that has to deal with the parents' fault because and that's why you have this uproar with parents where they're pulling their kids out of the educational system. And you have the justice system that is throwing parents in jail nowadays for
Oh,
pulling their kids out of,
yeah.
school and disagreeing with this crap. Like this is a
And they're
democracy.
they're like what do they call them? They call them like terrorists, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But that's part of the truth and that's part of the facts about what's going on right now in America. It's all screwed up. Like I would love to have children. Can I have children? I don't know. I'm getting older. But at the same time, I'm just kind of like, dude, do I really want to bring my kids up in this atmosphere?
I
Because
think
with
I think
me,
you can do it, but like the thing with me is like my kids they don't go to public schools, never have, never
yeah,
will. They go to private institutions.
right,
But
that you
when
approve
they get
of.
to college, they'll probably maybe, they're gonna have to delve
I
probably
want to go
into
to Berkeley.
yeah. But yeah, that they'll probably get the public institutions. But I hope by that time that ideologically they'll be okay, like where they'll know
Right. They won't
what's
walk
right and wrong,
backwards. I get
and
it.
they won't be swayed by the dumb shit.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. You have these teachers, and I think this should almost be kind of a standard thing where this is just my personal opinion on it. But I've told your brother before, because I've had this conversation with your brother. Shout out to Max. But I've had this discussion with him before where I told him, like, this is like 2018, maybe 17.
Mhm.
Me and him were at the bar or something like that. And I told him, I was like, dude, like, teachers have the hardest job in the world, especially when you have to teach a little piece of shit other kids, another parent's piece of shit kid that doesn't want to listen.
Yeah, they're underpaid, for what they
Exactly.
do.
You're completely underpaid. And especially nowadays where, people can walk into a school and shoot the place up and shit. And your brother was kind of like, come on, like teachers don't have the hardest job.
Well, can you imagine though, like, you get like your bachelor's degree and or your master's, and then you're taking on like a low city job salary,
Right.
being a public educator, and how many years is that going to take that educator to pay off that loan, the student loan that they may have,
Right. But
you
it's a
know?
big giant Ponzi scheme. I mean, okay, so like I love finance, but I could even recognize this shit when I was like maybe 25 of what was going on. So the financial crisis in '08, right?
Mhm.
I love finance, and I'll probably be bringing the 2008 financial crisis up a lot because it really did change America.
The housing
But
crisis.
yeah, the housing crisis. So in 2008, what was the premise of 2008 essentially? It was a debt crisis. Who were the banks giving all of these terrible loans to?
People
Minorities
that
and
could
people
people that couldn't
couldn't pay it
afford those
back.
homes.
Yeah, people that couldn't pay it back. So there
Yeah.
was a lot of predatory lending. Preying on people. There's a book, The Big Short, and there's like a little excerpt in there where like the euphoria and outrageousness and the fraud that was going on. There was a strawberry picker in California that could afford a $500,000 house, but they were all using liar loans and stuff like that. But the premise of it being in my argument on this is that during that time the government was saying, "Oh, the economy is doing so good because of all this GDP," but essentially it was just a bunch of people getting loans that they didn't weren't going to pay back, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have the incomes; they were relying on it and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that bubble popped. All that debt got inflated away, and the other half of it got written off like a big giant black hole. There was just so much debt. Nobody knew how much anybody knew. So they bail out the rich. And in order to get out of a bubble, they had to make an even bigger bubble. So
Mm-hmm.
what was that? The government bubble. And what is the government bubble derived off of? The education bubble, right? When Obama
Mm-hmm.
came into as president, one of the very first things he didn't, you know, uh, restrict the banks or anything like that. He told, well, the economy has changed and everybody needs to go back to school. This is where you had like 50-year-olds and 60-year-olds going back to college and shit. And this is the end result of it now, where you had that same predatory lending created by the government and the banks. Now this is the fallout of it, where like you have these people who took out student loans that can't even put a roof over their head,
Wait, so to go back a little bit here, so there was these 50 and 60-year-old people, um,
that lost their job in
and
2008.
but they went back to school, you said?
Yeah, because the propaganda machine told you that those jobs weren't coming back. Remember when
Oh,
Obama
so
said, like,
they
oh,
needed
what's
to get a
Donald Trump
higher
going to do? Is he just going to
education to
wave a
make more
wand and all
money?
these jobs are going to come back?
So
Right.
they
Like,
they felt they needed to get a higher education to.
right. Because the media, and then you also have the president propagating this crap, saying you need to go back to school in order to learn the new jobs of the new future, right?
Yeah, so then in turn, the government is handing out student loans hand over fist.
Right. And in 2011, all of those student loans went from the private sector to the public sector.
Mm,
So, and that's exactly what happened in 2008. 2008, we shifted all of that private debt from all of the big banks and the corporations and people, and we put it on the nation's credit card bill. So
yeah.
we moved all of that private debt onto public debt. Well, now all that public debt is due to a point where, like, that's why the government during COVID, that's what I was telling everybody. Like, COVID has always been a psyop. It's always been a camouflage. They needed a reason to bail out the big banks again because the big banks weren't trusting one another again.
Mm-hmm.
There was shit going on in the bond market, which is the debt market, which is like 10 to 15, even 20 times bigger than the stock market is the bond market because you can issue more debt than you can stock.
Yeah.
So that was acting very weird before COVID even hit. Okay.
Yeah.
So even before COVID hit, it was something like 70% of Americans didn't have $400 in emergency reserves. And the default rate on the auto loans started to trickle up in
Yeah.
2019. Well, then lo and behold, COVID hits, the government steps in and says, "Hey, to prevent this debt crisis, right? Because corporations were over leveraged and stuff like that, but primarily it was human citizens, U.S. citizens, took out a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of credit card debt. Oh, the economy's doing great. I'm making all this money. I'll just, rack up some debt, crap like that."
The government comes out with the American Rescue Plan.
Exactly right. So now you don't have to pay rent, which,
You're getting a
uh,
monthly stipend from the
yep, you're
government.
getting stimulus checks. And at the same time, you don't have to pay your student loan debts.
Yes.
So this is why everything shot up in price was because when you don't have to pay off your student loan debt because they're so high, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's people I know that have to pay almost a mortgage payment in student loan debt a month.
That's
Well, when you
insane.
don't have to pay that, and then all of a sudden during that time of not having to pay your debt,
You have more equity in your account.
Right. You also have more disposable income. But here's the thing. Why do you think real estate prices skyrocketed during that time? Because when you go to apply for a mortgage, one of the things that they ask you for is your debt to income ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? The fraud that has been committed in the last couple of years during COVID, especially with real estate,
People
because you can
didn't put
always
down their
leverage it.
student loans.
You don't have to pay your student loans, right? So, oh, well, we're not going to ask you about your student loans because you don't have to pay them right now, right?
Yes, that's right.
So, take away your student loan. How much are you bringing in right now?
An
A
extra
lot more,
1,200, $1,300.
right? Extra. Oh, you know what? Zillow says you can afford $1 million house and you're a
Yeah.
finger painter teacher, right? Oh, you work at Subway, you can that's a 500,000 because
Subway.
dude, it's the same scam that's been going on in during 2004, 2005. I was at the bar a couple of months ago and I was talking to this real estate lady because she was real dressed up. She kind of looked like a realtor and stuff.
Yeah.
And this is legit. I'm an asshole because I'm like, I know what's going on. So I kind of like prod a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this lady, she was an older woman and she was all dressed up, looked like a realtor and stuff like that. Probably just, closed a deal or something like that. And I was talking to her. I was like, oh, what do you do? She's like, oh, I'm a realtor. And I said, oh, okay. If, don't mind me asking, I'm kind of curious and stuff like that. Sure, no problem. They're
Mm-hmm.
realtors at the time when everybody's making money. They think everybody's a sucker, right?
Yeah.
I've never met a realtor that said it's a bad time to buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like a car salesman. Oh yeah, this car's gonna be here. It's not gonna last long, dude. It's been here for like years. The 42 Pinto. But I was talking to this lady, and I said, "Hey, if you don't mind me asking, uh, how long have you been a realtor for?" She was an older lady.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, "Oh, I've been doing it for a number of years and stuff like that." I said, "Oh, okay." And I said, "If you don't mind me asking, you know, you've been really busy lately in the last couple of years, right?" And she goes, "Oh yeah, extremely busy. I haven't been this busy in a while." And I said, "Okay." I said, "So what do you think is going to happen when they start to raise interest rates?" And a lot of those interest rates are adjustable rate mortgages.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, "This is last year, a couple months. So interest rates are already rising, right?"
Yeah.
And she kind of got a little hesitant and she goes, "Oh, well, the lending standards aren't that bad if you're trying to think of what you're trying to think of." She was
Yeah.
kind of like understood where I was going with this. And I said, "Oh, how the lending standards been?" She goes, "Well, if you're thinking about what you're trying to say, the lending standards are a lot better than what they were during the last housing crisis." I said, "No, they're not." And she gives me this dirtiest look of like, "How dare you
Yeah.
tell me I'm 50 years old. I've been a realtor for like, 10 years."
Why does she
And
care though? Because the housing market is it still pretty hot right now? I mean,
it's leveling off no different than how it did in
but
'07.
yeah, it's like, I think that's like the last thing on her mind is because she's probably getting commission checks left and right, dog.
Exactly right. And like most realtors, they only think on a monthly basis.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 10 closings. Well, what happens if you don't have any closings the next month? That's not going to happen. And then it happens and they're like, What's going on?" Right?
Yeah.
So I told this lady, I said, because she was kind of like, the lending standards aren't as bad as they were. I said, "You're right. They're not. They're even worse." And she gave me the dirtiest look. And I said, "I'm a millennial." I said, "My generation is flooded with student loan debt. Now, don't you find it a little surprising that in the last couple of years, when you don't have to pay your student loan debt, home prices have skyrocketed along with, the money printing and stuff?"
And the
But I
money in
gave
your
her this,
pocket.
right. and I gave her this statistic, and I said the entire money supply in the last 2 years at the time, 2 or 3, I said has gone up 40%. So 40% of the entire money supply has been created in the last 2 years. I said home prices have risen 42% in that same amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Huh, what a coincidence, huh? And she got pissed and she goes like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about
I'm
and
getting
shit
the
like
hell
that.
out
I,
of
I said
here.
you
Get away from
she
me.
yeah,
Racist.
yeah, misogynist, I'm like, whoa, whoa. I bought you a drink. What do you but you know, and I was telling her and she's trying to like deny it. And she goes like, you're talking about like subprime and stuff like that. I don't deal with those kind of people. And I said, well, here's the kicker though. Subprime was 0% down, lady. I hate to break it to you, but FHA is the new subprime. It's 3.5%. What's the fucking difference between 3.5 and zero?
Yeah.
Really? When everybody's making money on the real estate market, you don't give a shit if it's 3 or a 0%.
Mm-hmm.
But when it doubles the 7%, now you're kind of thinking like, I don't know if I can pay that. But now all of a sudden, the chickens are coming home to roost, and more realtors. I just saw a couple articles ago that I read that it was something like 35% of small business owners that are in realtors or something like that couldn't pay their rent because the entire mortgage market completely locked up. It's completely dependent on cheap credit to keep the crap running.
Wow.
That's why I was telling everybody, I'm like, dude, like there's a banking crisis that's been manifesting in the last like year and a half
Mm-hmm.
because who is giving out all of these fraudulent loans? The banks, these mortgage lenders and shit. That's why mortgage lenders right now, there's like some crappy ones that are going bankrupt right now. But I was telling,
Like what? Lending Tree?
yep, Rocket Mortgage and stuff like that. Like they're hurting. And you can even see it in their stocks. It just goes like this. Interest rates go up. Boop.
And these are like the lenders that they give you like those small budget loans, like the like 2,500 to like $5,000 loans or
Well, they
whatever.
essentially like they give you shit loans because the big banks wouldn't touch it, right? The
Yeah.
big banks learn their lesson, but at the same time, big banks always want a piece of the pie, no matter how fraudulent it is. So
But
what
these
big
little
banks,
ones, they clean the floor with you with the interest.
right? They're like carp. They're bottom feeders and shit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the big banks will trade those mortgages for them. So it's like it's a fraudulent kind of. I know what you're doing is wrong, but at the same
It's a
time, I'm
pyramid
gonna
scheme.
exactly. I'm not gonna take the full hit. You will because you're the
Yeah.
little fish, you know.
Yeah.
But that's what's been going on the whole entire 2 years, and now all of a sudden the chickens are coming home to roost.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was even looking at homes, I would in the neighborhood that I was in, I would go to open houses. And this is a true story. I go to the open houses. No, I wanted to buy, but I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to get my hands dirty and start asking some of the people who were in these open houses, oh, this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I go to an open house that was packed, dude, there'd be like 30 fucking people looking at this like 3 bedroom little cottage house, Cape Cod house, right? It's like a little starter home. It's
Yeah.
going for like 230, 250. It doesn't have air conditioning, no central air or anything like that. And they want like 240 for it, 250.
No
I'm like,
way,
this,
dude. No
yeah.
way.
I'm like, this shit is a dump. I'm like, I wouldn't I wouldn't give you a Twinkie and a ho-ho for this piece of shit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I go to these open houses, and the first thing that I would do every time I would look at a house, I always look at the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
All
Oh,
those
that's
little
important.
right, all those little 3 bedroom Cape Cod houses, they all are made on those like cement blocks and shit on the
Mm-hmm.
outside of the foundation. Usually a lot of them are exposed because they're about 2 feet up.
Yeah.
So like I would always walk around the house and when I would be at these open houses, people would ask me like, and then I'd be looking at the roof, right? Because if the foundation's screwed, that means the roof is screwed,
Yeah.
right? You have terrible flow out of your gutters and stuff like that. It just pools up and eventually just rots away the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So those would be the first things that I would be looking at. And I would have these conversations with random people and they're like, "Oh, like what do you do for a living and stuff like that?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's not good." And and they're like, "What do you mean? What do you mean that's not good?" Because these were like blatant people that didn't know anything. I
Mm-hmm.
just learned on my own about a little bit about real estate, but I've been doing roofing too for a long time. So I'm like, the very first thing you look for is the foundation and then the roof.
Yep.
And then after that, then you can care if if you're a girl or something, then you can care about the kitchen and shit and the
Nah,
bathroom.
screw that, dude. You gotta make sure that the like
Right.
the HVAC system is like
Yep,
in working
exactly right.
order,
You
or
got a
like
couple
check
of
how
main
old it
things. You
is.
got the roof, foundation, the HVAC system, and the
Yeah,
all of that
because
internal crap.
one thing you don't want to do when you're buying a home is buy a home when the life expectancies are like over half of like what's left of, like your central air or your water heater.
Right.
Because if you don't have what is it? Like a home warranty plan,
Yeah.
that's a lot of money you're coughing up there.
And you got to remember too, when all of this fraud was going on, people were waiving home inspections. If that ain't a red flag, I don't know what the fuck is.
Oh
When people
wow.
are spending $200,000, 300, 400, $500,000, and they're waiving the home inspections
And that's a lot
because
of the convenience of the market to keep
exactly
the
right.
market going.
Exactly. It's a self-fulfilling bubble where it just keeps feeding on itself.
So then what? These home inspectors are just getting like fraudulent money for not doing a home inspection then?
Yep, exactly right. Because that was exactly the fraud that was going on during the 2006, real estate bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were getting the home inspectors would get kickbacks from the realtors because they're all in cahoots with one another. They all go
Yeah.
to the same conferences and shit.
Oh, so they would probably just throw them like an extra 500 to what they would charge for inspecting a home just to say, hey,
Exactly
it's
right.
good.
Right. Not even that. A lot of the home sellers would be like, if you want this home, we're going to waive the home inspection fee because otherwise somebody else will buy it because it's a euphoria. I got to get a house. And especially like millennials, we're stupid as shit, right? We buy
Mm-hmm.
stupid shit we don't need. We care more about the Kardashians than we do our own families, right? Or we know more about them
I
than
I
our own
don't.
families.
I no. I don't keep up with them, dude. Screw
Well,
them.
nobody does. I'm just saying America in general. This is like the new America. People know more about the Kardashians than they do about their own families.
It's because people want to be nosy, dude.
Well,
You know
people are just dumb,
that, or
right?
they don't
They want a
want to. They
lifestyle
don't
that they
want to
can never have.
communicate with
They don't
somebody
want to
face
work
to
for,
face.
right? People want what they can have, so they kind of like stimulate themselves in a way that euphorically where they feel that they can obtain that. If I can just manifest this $1 million, I'll be fine. But during that whole entire spiel, dude, like I'd go to these open houses and a lot of those old what do you call them, like Cape Town houses kind of thing.
Yeah. Or
Those old
Cape
like
Cod, like you said.
yeah, Cape Cod. Those old blocks that are glass that like grandma and grandpa had in the basement and shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So like I go to like
It's called.
houses.
I think that's called like security glass block.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So I go to these open houses in my neighborhood because of my whole neighborhood is just made of those houses everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'd see those blocks and they're all cracked, which would tell me the foundation is fucked, right?
The foundation's leaning on the
Yeah.
on
So
yeah
they're
on
they're
that glass.
compressing on them and they're cracking.
Yeah.
So I'd be standing outside and like somebody else, and this is like the hive mind or the herd mentality. This is kind of what like systematically justified my uh opinion on what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be sitting there and I'd be like, oh, that's not good. And then somebody would overhear me and they go, what? What? Oh, what do you do for a living? And I'd always tell them, oh, I do like HVAC work. And they're like, oh, like, what'd you see? And I also tell them like, oh, I used to do roofing too. And they're like, oh, what do you see? And I see, oh, you don't see those blocks? They're all cracked.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I didn't even see that. And I'm kind of like looking at them and I'm like, you don't know what the fuck you're buying. All right, do
Yeah.
you? You know,
Yeah.
I'm kind
Yeah.
of thinking to myself, you don't even look at what you're buying. And that was on multiple houses where I was kind of like thinking in the back of my head, like, these people don't even know what they're buying.
Mm-hmm.
I went to go look at a house, had no air conditioning, no central air. The whole entire basement had like this wrestling mat, like insulation.
Yeah.
And I told him, my realtor at the time, I go, hey, is there any way possible like they can pop this crap off and I can look behind it to
Mm-hmm.
see if I'm willing to bet there's a bunch of condensation on the concrete behind it. Oh, no, 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 they don't want that. And I'm like, okay, that's understandable. So how much they want for this house? It doesn't have any air. I would have to put air in it. That costs a couple of grand. Run the ductwork and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they want like 240 for it. And I said, this thing doesn't even have air.
No way.
Exactly. And I go, okay, no problem. I said, if I could get a good deal on it, then I'd throw it. But that was just me bullshitting. I'd
Mm-hmm.
just be going to these different houses to see what the price was.
Yeah.
I shit you not, Ronnie. A day later or like 4 hours later, the fucking house sold as
Wow.
is for the exact price, like 240. And I'm like, dude, you have to realize, Ronnie, all these people that overpaid for all of these houses, waived inspections, didn't know what they were buying, overpaying for this shit. This is the exact same problem we had in the real estate bubble. When you have skin in the game, okay, that's one thing. But when you have so many people that lied on their mortgage applications saying they didn't have to pay their student loans at the time,
Mm-hmm.
which artificially and fraudulently, in my opinion, boosted their credit scores. That's artificial. So they're
Mm-hmm.
overpaying for these crappy houses. Then all of a sudden something starts breaking on it. Now you're house poor. After you start going house poor, now there's a recession right around the corner. Now you're losing your job. Now, on top of it, I think in July or some shit like that, the government's going to bring back student loan payments. This is exactly what I was like looking forward towards because I'm like, oh, there's going to be blood in the water.
When these people fill out these um like mortgage loan applications and they ask for their when they ask for the name of the employer and then like
Yeah.
their yearly salary
Hmm.
and then the people like overcompensate like what they actually make.
Yeah, they
Is
call
that
them
another
ninja loans.
driving factor into them getting these loans that they can't afford as well?
Right. For what?
Is that another driving factor into these people getting these loans that they can't afford when they
Yeah, it's
overcompensate um their yearly salary, you know?
yeah. Well, you're not being truthful because at the same time, the government created the atmosphere for you not to be truthful, right?
Mhm.
The smarter thing would to be like, yeah, I got student loans. But you also have to realize is that a lot of these real estate agents make commission. So they need to make a sale no matter what. So they're greedy, right?
Yeah.
Blatantly just greed. And just like they're like car salesmen. They just prey on people. Well, that's not the kind of real estate agent that I am. Okay, you're one out of 100, right? You
Yeah.
know, and that's what I mean with these people, where I'm just kind of like, okay, you're an exception. But the other guy who just made 10 deals in 1 month, he could give two pisses about what is going on these houses,
Mhm.
right? And even my own real estate agent, I asked her a question when I first met her, right? She was cute. I liked her.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
kept her around and shit. But I had no intention of buying a house. She just kind of emailed me, "Hey, do you find anything you like?" "No, still looking," you know.
Just some eye candy for you, huh, dog?
Yeah. And I asked her a question when I first met her. I was like, "Oh, how long you been doing this?" She goes, "Oh, like a year,
Mm-hmm.
year and a half." "Oh, right when COVID and interest rates hit zero, huh? Weird." You know what I mean? But she was a sweetheart. She was great at what she did, but at the same time, like I think she was right around my age, probably around like 26, 28. But
Yeah.
that's what I mean. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Is like this is a creation of the government and the Federal Reserve. They artificially boost these interest rates down to like zero or negative in some cases. That's why like you had Bitcoin and all these cryptocurrencies, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, the stock market skyrocketed
Yeah.
because it's a euphoria where like there's always going to be a safety net. You're
Mm-hmm.
always going to get bailed out. So it's like a thing kind of called moral hazard where like you shouldn't bail somebody out because it creates moral hazard. And moral hazard is essentially where if you bail somebody out once, why wouldn't they just take even more risk because they know you're going to bail them out a second
Yeah.
time? Right.
Mm-hmm. It's
Well,
almost like an addiction.
right. You keep giving them put a little bit more crack in the crack pipe.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it because daddy's always going to bail you out. But eventually, daddy ain't there to bail you out. And then
Mm-hmm.
what happens? You can't call mom. She ain't got shit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mom's in the same situation you're in.
Exactly right. You're dependent on this one thing. And last year, I was telling everybody there's a banking crisis that's manifesting. And they're like, what are you talking about? Everything's fine and shit. But last year, when they started raising interest rates, everybody started to realize why is everything going up in price? Why, like, I just read an article. It's kind of been making its round on YouTube too, but I saw it
Mm-hmm.
maybe a day ago. Disposable income hasn't collapsed this fast since 1932 in the middle of the Great Depression
Oh wow.
because cost of living has skyrocketed,
Yeah.
but the ability to service your debt because everybody took on massive amounts of debt
Yep.
can't happen. So
And now everybody is you paying their bills with credit cards now too because
that's why
they can't
savings have
use their
collapsed.
disposable income to pay their bills.
Yep.
They have
Savings
to
has
use it for
collapsed.
like they use it for like groceries and stuff that they need,
Savings
essential
at
things.
exactly right. Savings at the height of the pandemic was at 27%. It's at 2% right now.
Hmm. That's
So in a
terrible.
matter of So in a matter of 3 years, it went from 27% savings to 2%.
Yep.
But if inflation and the government is saying inflation's only at, I think that was at 9%, now it's at 6%. But we all know it's at 60%.
Hmm.
When you go from a price of eggs from $1.79 to like
To
$4,
$7.
yeah, in California, $7, that is literally hyperinflation.
Yeah.
Because if you were to take somebody from the 1900s and drop them off in today's world and say, "Hey, go grab me a carton of eggs." Sure, no problem. Here's 10 cents, sonny.
Speaking of eggs, I'm actually getting 2 dozen eggs tomorrow morning at
Oh
work.
yeah.
There's a
What
guy that I work with. He has a farm and he's got some chickens, and he called me on my way home from work today and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna you like eggs?" And I was like, "I love eggs." He's like,
Yeah.
"Well, my
I rocky that shit.
he's like, "Yeah, my hens have been laying a lot of eggs here and yeah, I was wondering if you wanted some." I was like, "I'll bring 2 dozen in tomorrow for you." I was like, "Fantastic. I'll take
Right,
them."
great. I even had to switch over to egg whites and shit because like they sell carton of like egg whites and shit.
Yeah.
There's like I buy that crap at Aldi
Mhm.
because I was trying to like, oh yeah, I need protein and stuff like that.
Eggs are so good for you, dude.
Oh yeah.
They're so great for you.
I just saw something that egg yolk has antibody in it.
Yeah, for to defeat the COVID or
Yeah,
like
to defeat COVID,
SARS-CoV-2 or
correct.
something like that. And then now people are trying to
Get rid of eggs.
No, well, yeah, but they're trying
those are
to
Putin eggs.
draw like a line to like some like chicken hatchery that blew up in Connecticut, I think it was.
Yeah.
Lost like a bunch of like 100,000 chickens or something like
Yeah, I
that.
think the number one egg producer, chicken producer in the United States just burned down
Or
mysteriously
I think it
because of
was
this guy.
probably
Must have been
the
working there.
probably on the East Coast, maybe.
Yeah. This guy must have left a
Yeah.
burnt sig there.
Yeah.
But I mean, like the way that the world is going right now, all the world needs when you have the government telling you everything's fine, but the average American is
And
like,
it's not fine.
it's not fine, right? This is just like Obama's economy.
Stockholm syndrome.
Exactly right. This is just like Obama's economy. The stock market keeps going up, but the real economy starts to deteriorate even faster and faster. I mean, you got to remember, like, and Trump was in the same position that his economy was with George Bush. George Bush, tax cuts,
Neocon.
yep, tax cuts, war, shit like that, paying for war that we couldn't afford, and then all of a sudden the housing
Did
bubble
Saddam have
popped.
nukes?
No, he had yellow cake. It was even more dangerous.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know what the fuck you can do with aluminum tubes? But yeah, like Trump's economy was the same way. That's why he did the tax cuts to keep trying to keep the fucking debt bubble going and shit. The more and more every president now, we're in a death loop or a death spiral where every president from now on has to take out more debt. That's why we end one war, we start another war because we have to just keep creating debt to keep this artificial fake system alive. But the more and more you do that, the more and more it falls faster, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where instead of the real thing to do, or the smart thing to do would just be tell the truth, tell the facts, and let the American people deal with it. But it's just like any relationship. The minute you start telling the truth and shit, all hell breaks loose, right?
Damn straight, dog. Damn
Right.
straight.
I just want you to be honest with me. Yeah, you're a little overweight.
So US the US economy is what, $32 trillion in debt? National debt?
No, actually it's like 200 trillion.
Really?
Yeah, because of unfunded liabilities and past costs. A
Mhm.
lot of it has to do with previous promises that we can't fulfill, like Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, all
Yeah,
that
that's
crap.
not gonna that Social Security is not gonna be around for you and me, my friend.
Mm-mm. No. So don't you think it's smart to stop spending billions overseas on countries that we can't even fucking put our finger on the globe and shit? Most Americans don't even know where the fuck Ukraine is.
Yeah. Well, it's all in the name of the military industrial complex, dog.
Right, but that's part of the problem. Like,
It's all in the name of protecting 46 bio labs. I don't even know if it's
right.
bio weapons, but it's bio
But
labs.
I agree with you. Absolutely 100% correct.
I'm
But
not for that though. I don't want that.
this is where, like all deteriorating empires come from. Abraham Lincoln said it best: "This country will never fall to a foreign invader; it will rot from within."
And that's
It's up
exactly
to
what it's doing.
exactly right. So
That's
me
why
being, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. At this point, I'm not even independent. I used to be kind of like an independent because I like thinking independently, but I'm an anarchist. I like the chaos because ultimately you're going to have to deal with it. And you can either deal with it the way you've been trying to deal with it, or you're going to deal with it the way that I know it's going to be dealt with.
what's that?
Absolute chaos and anarchy. And let me
Like
tell you,
rioting and looting and
you've already done that. That's just a little symptom of it.
oh,
I'm talking about like
1984 type stuff?
no, not even that. Like we were talking on our previous podcast about
Oh,
Rex 84.
Hunger Games type stuff.
No, it won't even be that. It's gonna
Dude.
be. Hmm.
Well, what's it gonna be like?
Essentially, they're gonna have to flip the switch to create a new boogeyman. What I mean is like the only thing that is
Like another Trump or something?
no. Like the virus, right? The entire virus
Oh, well, that's what
does
Project Veritas uh was busted for. They
right
wanted to keep mutating the virus so they can keep making
to keep
money.
it going. So we go from crisis to crisis, but when you're in a crisis state, the only way to control the crisis is to create the next one. Does that kind of
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yes.
Okay, so it's kind of like how we handled the south border. You don't want to take out the main cartels because you'll just create a vacuum like you did with Iraq, where you
Hmm.
take out the thumb and the other four fingers turn into thumbs, right?
Yeah.
So you want to control the thumbs, like we control the cartels. We don't want to get rid of the cartels. We just want to control them. And the way that we control them is by disrupting them into a way that we can control the disruption. So we're doing that exact same thing, but the government will do a cyber attack, I believe. It's also called a fire sale.
Hmm.
A fire sale is where essentially you take out transportation, the financial sector, and utilities. But the
Yeah.
utilities, majority of the utilities are hardwired directly into the system, meaning you need to go directly there and shut them down. They did this shit in Die Hard, Liver Free or Die Hard. Great
Mm.
movie. But that was part of the system was a fire sale where
Yeah.
you take out the financial sector so money can't get in or out.
Yep.
ATM stop spitting bills. You could be at a restaurant and your credit card won't work. And you'll
Shut
be
down.
like,
You shut down the transportation grid.
yep. You shut down transportation. Everybody starts killing each other and stuff like that because they keep blowing through red lights, right?
Hmm.
And then you start to take out the utilities. But in order to take out the utilities, you have to actually physically be there to shut the utility system
Yeah.
down or
So
overheat it.
domestic terrorism.
Correct. But it will also be our own government that in my
Yes,
opinion,
exactly. Like January 6th. Yes.
where- yeah, where it's right. Okay.
No.
Well, that's just it. Like the whole. All right, we can get past for this, but like the January 6th thing, like for me, and the whole entire January 6th, the whole entire time, I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it, I get it. I don't. It wasn't stolen because it's not even hooked up to the internet, but I get it. Okay, if you want to perceive that it's stolen, or the mail-in ballots, even though Trump uses mail-in ballots himself.
But you don't think Ray Epps is a FBI informant?
Ray Epps, who's I'm not
S-
familiar with Ray.
See, you don't even know anything about it, dude.
No, I'm not familiar with it all that much. I'm just perceiving it from what I've observed from it. And my
Yeah.
observation of it was
It wasn't an insurrection.
it was an insurrection.
You would consider that an insurrection?
Well, if Hillary Clinton did it, would you not consider that an insurrection? Yeah.
I would. I Yeah.
Right. I try to
Good
tell
point,
everybody
dog.
that.
Good point. Good point. Mm.
Yeah. When I'm at the bar and people say that kind of shit, like it wasn't an insurrection, I say, okay, like when Hillary Clinton lost in 2016, if she told all of her friends with those little pink pussy hats on their head, hey, go go stop the election and take down the Capitol, wouldn't every single Trump supporter, in an alternate universe that lost in 2006, wouldn't you be saying like, oh, she's a traitor, like that's an insurrection, we need to hang her?
Where do you stand on
You
that
all
Capitol
would.
police officer that shot Ashley Babbitt and she was unarmed?
Well, what the hell were you doing? You want to act like there's no guns in there?
No.
You have to remember that the American people are so frustrated at the system, but all throughout history, during revolutions, people are always and have been misdirected during those revolutions.
Hmm.
There is always a puppeteer, I want to say, where that will intervene and try to take control of the revolution. I don't believe in revolutions because they're cyclical. They always happen on and on. I always believe in evolution.
The only
You're
revolution
supposed
I believe in is by the Beatles.
Yeah, right.
This is a
Look for that guy, John
revolution,
Lennon.
yeah, you know.
No, in my personal opinion, January 6th was an insurrection. But at the same time, they were the people who went there should have stormed the Federal Reserve, not the Capitol. The Federal Reserve is the government. It is the shadow government. All wars are bankers' wars. You know, I think it was Ron Paul that once said it's no coincidence that the age of war has also coincided with the age of central banking.
Mm-hmm.
All wars need to be funded. All debts need to be repaid.
Yes.
And the only way to repay those debts during war is to conquer and take the natural resources. Right? So if the people that I even posted on Facebook, I think, where I was like, you know, if the people that were like storming the Capitol were smart, they'd probably go right up the street and go storm the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things from my observation throughout, you know, the last 20 years is that Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party aren't that different from one another,
Mm-hmm.
right? The Tea Party is conservative right wing, whereas Occupy Wall Street was more liberal. You know, I'm gonna sit here and glue my hand to the fucking sidewalk crap.
Yeah.
Right. You're both identify the fact that something is wrong with the system. You're just too ignorant and dumb to actually agree with one another, which is exactly how the system survives.
Yes.
It's never been left versus right. It's always been top versus bottom,
Mm-hmm.
right? And people throughout history, the way that the system works and cocoons itself in order to protect itself is it pits people against one another instead of you trying to work with your enemy to find a commonality and realize that, hey, you know what? It really isn't me versus you. It isn't Republican versus Democrat.
No, it's
It's us against the
us.
system.
Yes. Yes. And the
Right.
system has all the tools it needs to drive us against each other.
Right. And it has
So
a
pretty
propaganda
much
machine.
in the way I see it is that you have the left is, you know, they hate everything about the right. And then the
Right.
right just thinks that the left is dumb and directs all their anger towards the government, even
Mhm.
its fellow Republican neocons.
Yeah.
Because the Republicans actually have a firmer grasp on what's actually going on.
Correct. But they also have their hand in the
But
cookie
then
jar.
there's yes, but then there's also some people that are on the left that know what's going on.
Mhm.
And then they're just still choosing to mislead those that have gone astray, that are too far gone to be saved.
Mhm.
They're just going to keep them wandering down that path.
Right. I mean, we've always seen throughout history that there's corruption, but we've never seen it so blatantly.
Yes. Yes.
And that is the anger that everybody is fueling their fires with.
yes.
Why am I being audited over trying to run my small business after the government just shut down my small business?
Dog, why are we being censored or in shadow banned on YouTube? What is up with that, dog?
Because essentially the system, in order to survive, it cocoons itself and
Dog,
it blows everything
We
else up.
we put up our first video yesterday and I couldn't find it for the life of me this morning at all.
Right. Well, that's because there's other Joe Biden haters.
Yeah.
Plenty to go around.
There's a lot of Joe Biden if you're looking for us. Where can they find us, Dill Baby?
If you're looking for us, you can find us on YouTube and Twitter. Truth underscore over facts at twitter.com or elonmusk.com.
And if they want to reach us,
If you want to reach us, you can email us at truthoverfactspodcast@gmail.com. Tell us what you think. Are we right? Are we telling the truth or are we telling facts?
are we crazy? Are we losing our minds?
Right. Our pets' heads are falling off. Cats and dogs living together. Mass hysteria.
Chickens moving around with their heads cut off.
Right. But that's just it. Like, I was telling the guy at work about this. Like, this is the beginning stages of hyperinflation. We're already in hyperinflation, but like now it's going to get to a point where the government will try to create, how do I put it, like false flag attacks on itself to justify the higher prices, just like what we just saw with that chicken dispensary. In all the years of my existence, I've never heard of the number one chicken producer going lit on fire as chicken prices are skyrocketing. Huh.
Exactly. And well,
What a
and then
coincidence.
and then I don't even think there's ever been so many food plants in the US alone in 1 year that have gone down in flames, you
Well,
know?
do you know who Henry Kissinger is?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Henry Kissinger has he has a couple of famous quotes. One of them is about virus, I think, and a vaccine. But another famous one that Henry Kissinger has is, if you can control the food, I think it says, you can control the people. If you can control the oil, you can control the countries. If you can control like water, you can control the world, right?
Do you know who was under Henry Kissinger?
What, during the
He
Nixon?
was like a mentor. Henry
Oh, George
Kissinger.
Soros or Schwab.
Yep, Klaus Schwab.
Yeah, Klaus Schwab.
Yep.
Well, that's just it. Like,
That's
people
the
need
same mentality that Klaus Schwab carries.
exactly right, because I've kind of said this before, is that the way that the elites work or even think is essentially like how Thanos thinks. The guy from the Avengers, the
Yeah.
evil guy. In order to save you, I have to kill you, right? It's not about me, because like when you're that old and you have that amount of money, you're so egotistical, you could care less anymore about money.
Yeah.
It's essentially trying to, I need to, spend all of my resources and intelligence and intellect and, networking in order for the very survival of the elites, because the elites are the smartest people, that otherwise they wouldn't be elites.
Well, it becomes an ideology, a religion,
Right. You
Like
say I'm a
so,
murderer. Right.
trying
Like,
to trying to come up with these digital currencies with the social credit score and
yep.
or like these vaccination passports are all, they say it's all in the name
Means of
of
control.
means of control, in the name of climate change and or
War.
the sake of making sure that you have all your vaccines.
The only time you've ever seen this amount of control from world governments is during wartime.
Mm-hmm.
So they inflate the currency, they expand the credit, people borrow credit, they speculate on it, they misspeculate, it goes bust, the system goes bankrupt. In order to solve the bankruptcy problem, they print a bunch of more money,
Cause
inflation,
more inflation.
more inflation, right? Because it counteracts deflation.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in order to essentially get the populace off of the fact that what has been going on and why everything is so high priced, they go to war. Because war has always been a way of resetting the system, but also justifying the means of higher prices.
Yeah.
You need to sacrifice your tuna because we have to send it to the soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. That's why tuna is so freaking expensive. It's not because they printed all of this money. It's because we're at war, right?
Yes.
And this is why I'm saying, like, the only thing that I can think of that denies all plausibility and all accountability.
Shipping more Americans overseas so that there's less people around to buy goods, which can help eventually bring down the inflation.
No, you can't do it that
Oh.
way. No,
It sounded pretty good though, didn't it,
right.
Doug?
Yeah, it did. The only way that you can actually bring down inflation is here's the thing that not a lot of people know. You could stop inflation tomorrow. And the way you could stop inflation by tomorrow is you
Is
go,
eliminating the fiat currency.
yeah, that correctly, but at the same time, if you stop that, if you just get rid of fiat currency, the whole system implodes. That's kind of what happened in the
The
UK
yeah,
a
the
couple months ago.
Bank of London, right? London Bank or the Bank of
Not,
England?
yeah, Bank of England. The Bank of England just went bust, and not a lot of people fucking know that because it
Mm-hmm.
happened a couple of months ago. They're uh, they call it gilts. It's like our
Yeah.
U.S. Treasuries. It's debt that the government creates. Well, the United Kingdom has some of the oldest pension system in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when the financial crisis hit, central banks came in and gorged themselves on this government debt, gilts, treasuries, mortgage-backed securities. They pushed the yields, bond yields so low, there's
Mm-hmm.
no juice left in them. So when there's no juice left in a bond, these pension
There's
systems gorge themselves on it, right? Because if you were originally getting 7% on a bond,
mm-hmm.
now you're only getting 1%. Now you need to buy 7 of those 1% bonds in order to
So
make
then
up for
these
that.
pensions come and kill the value of the bond.
Not necessarily that. They have to go on the risk factor in order to get the same amount of yield.
Mm-hmm.
In order to make the same amount of money that you were doing before that, you had to take even more risk, right? So the whole entire Bank of England just went bust. And the Bank of England told these pension systems, like, hey, we're raising interest rates. So the way that bonds work is they have an inverse relationship to their bond yields.
Yeah.
The lower bond yields go, the higher the price of the bond goes.
Mm-hmm.
So for the last 40 years, bond yields have been going down, meaning that bond prices have been going up. That's all reversed now.
Mm.
Now interest rates are going up and you're losing money. Who's ever holding those bonds is losing money. We're in the same position. It just hasn't hit us first yet. So the United Kingdom uses gilts, which are like treasuries. They're government debt, instruments.
Yeah.
So all these pension systems, the United Kingdom, are gorging themselves on these gilts, government debt of the United Kingdom. Then all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden they started to raise interest rates. Well, as soon as they figured out that they were raising interest rates and were serious about it, all these pension systems started dumping all of these bonds onto the market. The more
Mm.
debt that goes into the market, the higher the interest rate in the natural market goes. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
self-reassuring domino effect. The more and
Yeah.
more they put in, the worse it gets. So then the United Kingdom government came in, or the Bank of England came in and said, okay, you have like a month to get your shit in order. Then we'll start to re-raise our interest rates again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you literally just admitted what you're about to do. So, right. So so this is where I'm getting at. Like the whole entire system is so indebted, and the whole banking system is raising interest rates on itself.
Mm-hmm.
This is where you have like governments go bankrupt. This is why even, common Americans are going bankrupt because their credit cards, they're swiping their credit cards, savings is collapsed.
Is this why
Credit card
Sri Lanka collapsed?
Yeah, essentially it's literally, and this is where I was getting at with like how bad it's gonna get. It's shitty, dude. It's gonna get like Venezuelan style and shit.
Yeah.
I like to remind our listeners and viewers, in Venezuela, they didn't have any fucking like chicken or anything like that. They didn't have any meat. You had to get that shit on the black market. You had to get gasoline on the black market. This
Wow.
is right because of what was going on. The system is failing, but the government is trying to control it in a way like it's not failing, it's working even better. But, we can't let you know that. That's
Yeah.
why there's no middle class anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, You know, it's like the millennial generation are just modern day Bolsheviks. You know, Steve Bannon said it. You know, the millennial generation, they don't own anything. They're better clothed. They're better educated. You know, they have more stuff to do, but they don't own anything. And that's exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So is he saying that the millennials are actually pretty smart?
Yeah, essentially he's saying like this is where you're gonna get
Collapse of
the
like
paradigm shift
yeah
where
of
like
big banks
right
because
and
nobody's buying nothing up,
right because how can you buy something when all of your money is going towards paying off the debt you've already accumulated?
and then a lot of these people they like to lease or rent.
Mm-hmm. Like me, everything I own straight out.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's kind of like I like investing. So I invest in things when the populace or the herd likes something, I
Mm-hmm.
dislike it. I
Yeah.
should have already liked it before the herd liked it. If I was a good investor, I'd like to think I am. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
a good investor gets into the thing that other people will want before they want it.
Yeah.
You get out of it when everybody wants it, right? Because
Yeah,
you're
because
meant to
at
make a
that
profit.
point you're selling it and
Couldn't
making
be
a
any
shit
simpler,
ton of
right?
money off of it.
Right. Couldn't be any simpler.
Mm-hmm.
So you had all of these people in real estate that were buying Airbnbs, renting them out because
Mm-hmm.
the economy was reopening. But okay, what happens if a recession happens? When a recession happens, people lose their job. When people lose their job, they lose their disposable income. When
Which means
people
no
lose,
Airbnb.
which means no Airbnb,
Which means
right?
that you're gonna be paying a mortgage
That
while
you
you're
can't
living at some
service,
other like you're living at like a condo or something.
right? That
Yeah,
you can't
exactly.
service.
Yeah.
And then the system starts to unravel again.
Yeah, it starts to take a crap on itself.
All right. And that's why Credit Suisse, the Swiss bank, they had a lot of bad positions on the gilts and the Bank of England and on those
Mm-hmm.
pension funds. They were the other side of that bet.
Mm-hmm.
Credit Suisse essentially went bankrupt, but somebody had to inject money into them.
Rothschild.
Probably that, but I think it's called I think it's called the NSB, the National Swiss Bank.
What about the World Bank?
There's a World Bank. That's kind of like the central banks.
Mm.
There's the World Bank, and then there's the IMF. Then there's the International Bank of Settlements.
Deutsche
Then
Bank?
there's Deutsche Bank is just a regular investment bank.
Oh.
They're like Goldman's. I know it's dude.
Yeah.
It's so complicated. But I like that kind of shit because it's just kind of one of the things with me where I'm like, okay, I think you can figure this out.
Yeah.
So it's a scam on a scam with a scam in the middle of a scam.
If
Okay, got it.
anybody, if any of our viewers or listeners want to, you know, uh, watch something about a scam, watch that Bernie Madoff series on Netflix.
Oh, is
That's
that the
actually
one?
pretty good.
Was that the one with De Niro? The one with De Niro was
No,
good.
no, it's not De Niro.
Wizard of Lies.
It's
I
it's
highly recommend that.
it's like a crime doc.
Oh,
Yeah, but it's like a 4 episode documentary. Yeah,
mm,
pretty good.
yeah. I watched everything that I could get my hands on about that whole entire thing. And what was so fascinating about the Ponzi scheme that he was running was that like this is how you know you're in a euphoric bubble
Hmm.
because the people who are literally committing those crimes are always elected to run the agency to catch those crimes.
Hmm.
So Bernie Madoff was head of the NASDAQ commission.
Well, he was like the king of Wall Street because he like never took a loss.
Right. And that was the first thing that I forget the guy's name who figured out the Ponzi scheme. He said the exact same thing.
Hmm.
So he's like, if you were a baseball player, you'd be batting like 500 or 1,000 or something like that. and nobody can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew it was a Ponzi. He said it took him 5 minutes to figure out it was a Ponzi scheme. He goes to the Securities and Exchange Commission. He goes to all the authorities and the proper channels, but nothing happened. He figured out that Ponzi scheme in like 2000, 2001. It
Yeah.
wasn't until 2008 the credit crisis hit. People want their money, and when people want their money, it's always the elites that want their money first and can
Mm-hmm.
get their money first.
Well, Bernie didn't have the money to pay.
Right, but there was a great scene in The Wizard of Lies with De Niro. You should check that one out. I think it's on HBO Max still.
Oh, is that
There's a
new?
scene in No, The Wizard of Lies I think came out like 4 years ago.
Mm.
Great movie. It 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 really shows how much of a sociopath Bernie Madoff was. There's a scene in that movie where he's at a high class dinner, Bernie Madoff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is real or not, but it seemed pretty real in a sociopathic kind of way, where he was at this like $1 million, a plate dinner and stuff with all the other elites, and the financial crisis is going on.
Mm-hmm.
All these elites are freaking out and stuff, but they're all trying to act like keeping up with the Jonases, right?
Yeah.
They're all losing millions in the stock market and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But at the same time, they have to upkeep their image. Bernie Madoff gets a phone call from his accountant who's cooking the books upstairs on like the 13th floor or something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Hey, we're running out of money. I just had a call and wire like 200 million overseas, and we only have about 50 million left. We're going to be out of business by Monday. It's all going to be over, you know." And he's kind of like, "Oh, do I jump ship now?" and stuff like that. And Bernie Madoff's like, "Okay, yeah, I get it. Hang on a sec." He's talking to this rich elite guy, and the rich elite guy comes up to him and he goes, "Hey, I got a lot of money, and with your reputation, I need somebody who can handle my money." And Bernie Madoff's like, "Okay, hang on a sec." He's like, "Hang on, yeah, I'll call you back in a sec." Hangs up on his accountant, and the guy's like, "Oh, I got like 50 million or 100 million that I like to give you to spend, or help me make my money back."
Yeah.
And Bernie
Make
Madoff,
investments.
you're right. And Bernie Madoff, being the sociopath that he was like, "I can't do 100 million. Maybe for 300 million, I can do it." And the guy's like, "Oh man, I don't know. I don't have 300 million." He goes, "Sorry, I can't do it then." And he goes, "Okay, like how's 400 million sound?" He goes, "Yeah, 400 million, I think you can do." He calls up the accountant. He goes right back to him. He goes, "Yeah, we'll be covered. We're good until Monday." But that was just like how the whole entire scam was going on.
Yeah, and then he
It
was
was just
sending out these phony invoices.
right. I mean, just look at Sam Bankman-Fried. He was doing the shit on QuickBooks.
Mm-hmm.
When people are making
Dude,
money,
we're doing our shit on Skype, dog.
right, exactly. With this dude, this is our accountant.
Yeah. We're trying to get that. We're trying to get that Netflix contract so we can get our own studio,
These
dog.
are our sponsors.
Yeah, right here. Zelensky. Zelensky. Come on, man. Let me get some of my taxpayer money.
Yeah. I went to this guy.
Yeah. Come on, Hunter. Hook a brother up, dog.
Yeah. Help me out. I like strippers. But yeah, I mean, we can always talk about more of this stuff. But
Yeah.
I think that'll do it for us in this episode. I mean, we went over an hour on this one.
Yeah. We made some good progress today, dog. A lot better than
Yeah.
yesterday.
Big ups.
But how about for the last time tonight? Why don't you tell them where they can reach us or find us?
Well, you can find us on Twitter. We're on truth underscore over facts gmail.com, or at
No, that
gmail.com.
one's Twitter, isn't it?
I don't know. We just set it all up
At
today.
at
At
truth underscore over facts.
Twitter. That's
Yeah,
our
that's
Twitter.
Twitter.
And then
And then
Truth Over Facts Podcast at gmail.com. And then you can also catch us on YouTube at Truth Over Facts Amerigeddon Part 2.
Make sure you hit that subscribe button.
Yeah, subscribe. Tell your aunt and uncle too.
All right, Dylan. Good chat, dog.
All right, I'm Truth. That's Facts.
I'm
We
Ron.
are out.
That's Dill. We out. Good night,
Bye bye.
everybody.